Despite advances in forensic science, many people are convicted solely on the basis of eyewitness testimony. This means it's absolutely crucial that we understand how eyewitness memory operates and how reliable it is. This is one of those things where some criminal justice professionals, such as judges, argue that how eyewitness memory operates is essentially common sense, and so referring to behavioural science research has little value. Are they right? Well, let's look at one out of the many studies that have directly addressed this question. John Brigham and Robert Bothwell from Florida State University gave prospective jurors descriptions of real research studies in which people saw a simulated crime and were then asked to pick out the criminal in a lineup. The prospective jurors were asked to predict what percentage of the people in the study would be able to correctly identify the criminal. As you can see, people estimated identification accuracy to be between 51 and 71%, depending on the study. However, the actual accuracy of participants in these studies was always significantly and substantially lower, between 13 and 32%. So, the common sense beliefs of potential jurors were not true. In most cases, they weren't even close. The problem with these beliefs is that they influence how much credibility both criminal justice professionals and jurors assign to eyewitness testimony. Okay, so these were simulated crimes. Maybe eyewitness accuracy would be different in a high-stakes, real-world situation. So, let's take a really extreme real-world example. Let's take an absolutely horrific crime of mass murder where that crime was seen by millions of people via media coverage. And let's examine the memory accuracy of one individual who was at the heart of events. On the 11th of September 2001, the World Trade Center in New York was destroyed in a terrorist attack. The President of the United States of America at that time was George W. Bush. So, if there would be anyone who we might expect would have an accurate recollection of how he heard about this crime, it would be him. Yet on 3 occasions, he has made public statements about how he heard the news, and they don't all tell the same story. Okay, so in this case, we're not talking about testimony that affected the crime investigation itself, but the reason I want to use this example is because it's one of those rare occasions where the specific memories were able to be subjected to empirical research, and it illustrates a lot of the key points about human memory that are crucial to understanding eyewitness testimony. The first statement we have was made on the 4th of December 2001. Bush was in Florida making a speech. When the audience was given the opportunity to ask questions, a young boy named Jordan asked him how he felt when he heard about the terrorist attack. This is what he said.
Well, Jordan, you're not going to believe what state I was in when I heard about the terrorist attack. I was in Florida, and my Chief of Staff, Andy Card, actually, I was in a classroom talking about a reading program that works. And I was sitting outside the classroom waiting to go in, and I saw an airplane hit the tower. The TV was obviously on, and I used to fly myself, and I said, "There's one terrible pilot." And I said, "It must have been a horrible accident." But I was whisked off there. I didn't have much time to think about it, and I was sitting in the classroom, and Andy Card, my chief, who was sitting over here, walked in and said, "A second plane has hit the tower. America's under attack."
So that's the first account. And here's a picture of the event that was in all the newspapers at the time. Consistent with the account we've just heard, it shows Bush sitting at the front of the Florida classroom with his Chief of Staff, Andy Card, whispering the news of the second plane. So the end of the account seems to be fine, but there's one small problem with the beginning of it, namely that it's impossible. Bush clearly states that he saw the first plane crashing into the building before he went into the classroom. However, in reality, footage of the first plane hitting the tower didn't emerge until the 12th of September. Some people saw it as evidence of a conspiracy, as this quote from the website freeworldalliance.com demonstrates.
Complicit factions of the US federal government actually filmed their own attack on New York's World Trade Center, and Bush has admitted that he watched it.
Other media sources took the more moderate view that Bush was merely a liar, as these next two quotes demonstrate. The first is from anti-Bush website bushwatch.com.
The most benign conclusion then is that Bush was not telling the truth when he told Jordan that he saw the first plane hit the first tower.
And this final media quote is from a mainstream British newspaper, The Guardian.
The story that he was watching TV contradicts reports from correspondents at the time that he got the news in a phone call.
The critical point here for us is that all of these accusations make the assumption that Bush surely could not have misremembered something so dramatic and so important. That is, they assume that Bush's actual memory must be 100% accurate for such an event. And therefore he must be lying when he reports these demonstrably inaccurate memories. Let's hold that thought for the moment and move on to look at Bush's second account of how he heard about the crime. On the 20th of December 2001, Bush was interviewed by reporters from the Washington Post, and the story he told them was different. Here's an excerpt from the article.
Bush remembers senior advisor Karl Rove bringing him the news, saying it appeared to be an accident involving a small twin-engine plane. In fact, it was American Airlines Flight 11. Based on what he was told, Bush assumed it was an accident. This is pilot error, the president recalls saying. It's unbelievable that somebody would do this. Conferring with Andrew H. Card, his White House chief of staff, Bush said the guy must have had a heart attack. At 9:05 a.m., United Airlines Flight 175 smashed into the South Tower of the Trade Center. Bush was seated on a stool in the classroom when Card whispered the news. A second plane hit the second tower. America is under attack.
Notice that in this account, the details of what happened in the classroom are almost exactly the same, but the beginning of the story has changed and now pretty much reflects the accepted facts of the situation. Of course, it's likely that sometime between giving these two accounts, Bush heard about the backlash over his previous slip and made sure that he got the facts more or less correct the second time. But that doesn't explain his third and final statement. On the 5th of January 2002, Bush was again fielding questions from an audience when somebody asked, "What was the first thing that went through your head when you heard that a plane crashed into the first building?" This was his response.
I was sitting there and my chief of staff, well, first of all, when we walked into the classroom, I had seen this plane fly into the first building. There was a TV set on. And you know, I thought it was pilot error, and I was amazed that anybody could make such a terrible mistake. And something was wrong with the plane, or anyway, I'm sitting there listening to the briefing, and Andy Card came in and said, "America is under attack."
The main thing to note here is that Bush reverted to the impossible claim that he saw the first plane crash into the World Trade Center before he entered the classroom. Again, the details of Card's entrance remain unchanged, although to some extent that's unsurprising because Bush most likely saw the photograph we looked at before in the newspapers. So if we treat these accounts as an eyewitness's memory of a crime, how would we explain these inaccuracies? We've already seen data indicating that it's not a foregone conclusion that his memory would be 100% accurate. So if he is genuinely misremembering, what could be going on?